On today's show, Philipp Jacobsen. He's a physiotherapist by trade and he's vastly experienced, who's worked in Germany at the start of his career before heading to Greece, where he worked in football with Panathinaikos. He then came to the UK, where he worked with Portsmouth Football Club, before going to Qatar to work at Aspetar, one of the world's leading sports medicine and orthopedic hospitals. He was there for 11 years before conversations led him to Liverpool Football Club, where he became the medical rehabilitation and performance manager. Vastly experienced practitioner, and today on the show we're going to talk about some of the demands of high performance and what that means for practitioners, some of the challenges that we face when working on a day-to-day basis. Hope you enjoy the conversation.
This episode of the Informed Performance podcast has been sponsored by Vol Performance, makers of the Force Frame. Used by health and performance professionals for assessing and improving performance and rehabilitation, the Force Frame is a powerful solution for quickly and accurately testing isometric strength and imbalances. In addition to testing athletes, the Force Frame is also used to maintain and improve strength, offering over 130 isometric training protocols. As a portable and easy-to-use system, the Force Frame is designed to ensure every measurement can be accurately and reliably measured, time after time again. To learn more about the Force Frame, visit our sponsor, volperformance.com.
Welcome to another edition of the Informed Performance podcast. My name is Ben Ashworth, and today it's a real pleasure to welcome Philipp Jacobsen to the show. Welcome, mate.
Hi, Ben. How are you?
Yeah, very good. And as you said, just off air there, it would be nice to have this conversation over a pint, but today we're going to have to do it. I believe you're in the Greek islands, where it's pretty choppy and windy.
It is, and I can tell you the Greek beer is probably not one of my favorites, but it's still drinkable, and would love to share a pint with you at some stage when you come over.
Nice one. Well, yeah, or you can come to Prague, where we have probably one of the best beers in the world. So yeah,
very true, very true.
All right, let's just sort of bring the listeners into the conversation a bit, and essentially, for those people that don't know you, it'd be great if you could just give them a little bit of background about yourself and how you've come to be where you are at the moment.
Sure. I'm a physiotherapist by trade. Studied in Germany and started sort of like my career path in a rehabilitation center in Germany called Eden Reha, which was at the time run by the head of physiotherapy for the German national team. And that's probably the first time where I got into touch with professional athletes, especially football. Started working there for about 2 years, and in a very different way, I would say. It was just, seeing 15 minutes appointments, loads of clients during the day. And at some stage, I just said to myself, look, this can't be it. There must be more to physiotherapy than raking through patients day in, day out. And then, the opportunity came to go and work in Greece for a football team, which is actually quite a funny story because a colleague of mine said to me, "Hey, Phil, you know what? There's a job going in Greece. Why don't you apply?" And I was like, "Come on, what am I going to do in Greece? Never been there. No idea what it was like." And then this friend of mine sent actually my CV to these recruiters, these two physiotherapists. And the weekend came, they invited me for an interview, and I thought to myself, I was up in Frankfurt, it was about 5 hours drive by car, and I thought to myself, oh my God, am I going to really do this? And took the decision, drove up there, had a good chat with the guys, and on the way home, they called me and said, Phil, we really liked you, would you like to come and join us? So I was like, okay. I packed my bag, sold everything, and moved to Greece. And to be honest, not even knowing what club I would actually work for. Wow. I knew the name, but I didn't really knew much about Greek football at the time. and arrived in Athens, and then realized that it was one of the big two clubs, which was obviously at the time Panathinaikos and Olympiakos. And I got a job with Panathinaikos and stayed there for 4.5 years. From there, moved on with our team manager to Portsmouth. Worked there for 1.5 seasons, and changed job afterwards again, met my wife, moved back to Germany, opened my own clinic, did a bit of consultancy work in Munich, and realized that also Germany, it was just the same old again. The system hadn't changed and it wasn't really for me. And then an opportunity came up to work in Qatar. They advertised in a sports medicine, orthopedic sports medicine hospital that was brand new. They were looking for people with sports background that have worked in professional sports, football predominantly. So I applied for the job and got the job, and thought, first of all, we're going to go there for 2 years, see what it's like, and ended up staying for 11 years, which was a great experience, because we started really from day one. So I can't remember how many people we were in the beginning, but it was sort of 20 physios from all corners of the planet. Different languages, obviously different ideas, philosophies. And it was a real learning process to get everybody around the table and discuss how we want to treat our athletes. And it was such a new and novel thing in Qatar with physiotherapy that it was quite nice, because the patients' expectations were, it was a blank piece of paper. So you could really change the way that physiotherapy was seen and how we want to approach those patients. And as the hospital grew, I mean, by the time I left, I can't remember how much staff we had in the hospital, but it was way over 700 people. And it just grew and grew and grew. And it was a fantastic period in terms of getting exposed to research, different philosophies, like how does somebody from Australia work versus somebody from Denmark or from South Africa. And it was a really, really fantastic time. And then I joined the last 2 years when I was in Qatar. I joined the Qatar national team. Worked there for 2 seasons for the last World Cup, and we played some qualifiers there, and went back to Aspetar and headed up sort of like an elite pathway for international athletes, where we had a team of a sports scientist, myself, a doc, sports nutritionist, psychologists, everybody on board, and we tried to create the best package possible for these athletes. And then we slowly started getting players in from all around the world, and also from Liverpool. And the contact came again through the current sporting director, Michael Edwards, that, funny enough, worked with me in Portsmouth as well. And we just started talking, and he said, well, what are you doing? Would you like to come? So I think I had an interview that almost took a year for me to actually get the position in the end. So they spoke with the owners and spoke with Michael and with the coaching staff at some stage, but it almost took a year for us to make the move to Liverpool. And then spent 3 years in Liverpool. Had, I think, a very good time there in terms of success. And then unfortunately COVID hit, and we decided as a family, and you will know this better than I, once you're in football, there's just nothing else. It just eats you alive, and family, unfortunately, is left behind a lot of the times. And when COVID hit, we just realized, okay, there's more to life than this. And, we have small children, and we decided to move on. And here we are in Greece.
Well, there's a lot to unpick from that, Phil. And yeah, I totally get the last point about working in football. I mean, a lot of people who are listening who have their heart set on a career in football, I mean, it brings some amazing times and some experiences. But yeah, definitely the grind of competitive football seasons and the demands mean that you don't get to spend a lot of time with your family. I mean, the Premier League, what was it, 11 months of the year, pretty much, 6+1 days a week.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you miss out on all those things that other people take for granted. Of course, it brings its benefits too. We'll go on and talk a bit about that in a minute when we talk about some of the sort of demands. But I actually, I think draw the listeners' attention to the fact that Aspetar, and you were there right at the start, but the developments from a sports science and research community in Aspetar have been like world leading in terms of driving some of the stuff that, we do. And you highlighted there some interesting stuff around that kind of multidisciplinary, but also multicultural approach that you benefited from. How did that sort of help you set up for when you came into the Premier League and started to work in actually Premier League football? Like, what was it about Aspetar and that multidisciplinary stuff there that really, you think gave you some advantages when you came in?
Funny enough, the best part around this whole thing is to go to learn that you have to be open to change. So you have to be adaptable. You have to go in with a blank sheet and realize that, I'm German, and, Germans have their stigmatas for, being maybe very accurate and very precise and very direct. And you just have to realize that there's other ways, and you can approach a problem in different ways, and there will be still an outcome, and it might be even better than the outcome that you thought of. So that was one of the big learning curves in Qatar, that you have to adapt, otherwise you go under. And I think that really helped me going into the Premier League and coming back to England again, in a slightly different environment. But also what was really, really good, and you mentioned this before, was this multidisciplinary approach. So, you want to see the podiatrist, you walk up 2 flights of stairs and you've got a whole lab there with specialists from all over the world. You have nutritionists around the corner. You want to speak to a doc. The docs you just knock on the door and you can walk in and discuss. We started a groin clinic with some colleagues of mine, and for me, this was probably the best way of working together as a team, where we had a surgeon, we had a sports physician, we had a physiotherapist, and we just saw these patients all together, and we unified our approach. How do we diagnose? How do we treat those patients? How do we reassess them? If something went wrong, when are we going to go for a surgical procedure? What would be the rehabilitation protocol afterwards? So it was a really nice environment to work together, and that I thought was one of the pluses that I could take with me in my toolbox to England, to work together and to work for the best of the athlete and the player itself.
Yeah, that's a really nice insight, I think, into that multidisciplinary approach and the collaborative environment that you had there, which is not always something that you see when you go around the grounds and you look in terms of professional sport. Along that theme, actually, obviously when you're actually working as a leader of a medical team and a performance team in a football context, and this is becoming quite a trend now is that players, especially at the elite level, are going abroad and have their own medical teams, perhaps have their own physios. I remember going to actually Eden Rehab with one of the players from Arsenal at one point, and there was a definite difference in philosophy from the club to the national team. Similarly, some of the stuff that comes from Spanish doctors, when dealing with Spanish players, how did you navigate that difference of opinion that you get and those different cultural challenges that come into the role of managing a team?
I think that's a difficult one. But I always said to myself, imagine you have a pediatrician that you really, really trust, right? And that's for your kid, for your daughter, for your son. And that this guy knows your child inside out. He knows the history. He knows everything about this kid. And you move away. And all of a sudden, your kid gets ill, and you call your doc up, and you feel really confident, and you want to go there. But then maybe your employer would say, "Hey, go and see our doc. He's really good too." What would you do? And I came to the conclusion. A lot of it is psychology. It's about security. I mean, you're talking about somebody's livelihood here. If a player, and for them playing is their livelihood, if it comes to being able to play or not being able to play, then you want to have in your mind the best possible option. So the job that we as medical or as performance department have is just to facilitate and to help the athlete understand when something is wrong, and there could be, that the protocol is not right, or they're pushing too hard, or they're pushing too little, or the treatments are just not appropriate. But I think the psychological factor of feeling safe and feeling taken care of is worth a lot, and probably sometimes more than the actual therapy. So I came to the conclusion that, okay, you want to go somewhere, I understand it, we'll see what gets done. We follow up, we will speak with the practitioners, we'll try and even come over if it's a longer period. But I don't think there's a point in holding players back if they want to go somewhere, because it's just, people get upset, and it's hurt egos because they go, oh, why is he not staying with us? And I don't really think that is the case. It's not about you as a person, as the therapist. It is about this person that has the injury, and he needs to feel taken care of. And if that's not in the club, then you as a club should facilitate the treatment path.
Well, yeah, and as you were speaking there, I was thinking that's exactly how we met, actually, Phil.
Yes,
which we won't talk about the details of the particular player, but that's exactly how we met. And your openness to work with me at the time was something that I really valued, and obviously the player in question really valued too. And I think from my own perspective, that's probably influenced me quite heavily in how I deal with it now. When players come in and say, well, I've got my physio coming, from my national team or from my country, I've got this injury at the moment, I really trust them. Okay, look, well, I want to meet them. I'm happy to, within the bounds of confidentiality, and with their permission, to share that information that's going to benefit that player, because ultimately, not only are we looking after them, but we're also wanting them to come and perform and do their best for the team that we're working with. So I think, like trying to put egos out the way. I think where it breaks down for me, and this is the thing, is when you have a lack of communication and a lack of accountability for some of these people who work outside of teams, and especially those people who are kind of who haven't worked within a football setup. I think if you've worked within a football setup, you're very aware of that communication as being a vital component, because there's so many different ways to achieve the outcome that you end up disagreeing with someone who's also got the same good intentions, but they're just doing it in a different way, rather than bringing everybody around a table and going, well, look, I disagree with you, but you come out with one way when you work inside an organization, and that can create some big barriers, I think, to progress in that area too.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think when it becomes dangerous is, like you said, the accountability, and it is crucial that a lot of professional players, they're so used to getting told what to do that they don't want to really take responsibility. But I think when it comes to your health, and you need to understand what is happening, and if something goes wrong, that there's a part to carry on either side. It's obviously on the side of the department, but it's also on the side of the player, because they made the choice to go there. And if it gets highlighted that this treatment is not appropriate for whatever this player has, or the physical conditioning is just not good enough, or it's too much, then the player needs to take some responsibility. And this is a real hot topic, because what do you really do about it if something goes wrong? Then most of the times you're left to pick up the pieces, but that is a part of the job as well, to be there as a safety net afterwards, and help them back to performance.
Yeah, we've addressed some of the sort of challenges of the elite football environment so far. I think one thing we've discussed before, Phil, and I think your thoughts on this are really nice, is the sort of challenges to a medical team, especially thinking around the high stakes performance environments that you're working in. What does that mean for the medical and performance teams, so the staff that are working with the players? What do you think?
In a way, you're facing similar amount of pressure than the players do. It's obviously, playing in front of thousands of people, but your mind, you can't escape it. The performance of the team directly filters down to the backroom staff. The pressure they feel, you feel in a way, because they pushing you, they want to come back early, which is totally normal, and you have to try and stay focused on making the right decisions in this high pressure environment. And this might be that the player says, hey, I feel great, I can go back on the pitch, but you just know the tissue is not ready, it's not healed yet, he hasn't done enough work on the pitch, and then you need to be the sounding board and the damper, and that's quite challenging. And the same goes obviously for working with the coaching staff. The areas of interest are different but the same, and we all want to win, but the difference is that they think of the next game and they want to have as much players available as possible. So you have that pressure to deal with as well. And I think it's never an easy, and you correct me if I'm wrong, it's never an easy conversation to go and speak to the coaching staff about a player that's maybe not ready, or they say, oh, can he play 30 minutes? And the reality is you can't say yes he can, because he might drop out in the first 2 minutes, he might never drop out. So it's very, very difficult to play that part, and I think that's the biggest challenge in medical and in performance in general.
Yeah, I won't correct you, because I don't think there's a right and wrong there. I think it is always it's a balance, isn't it? It's a balance in making the most of all of the information available to you, making sure that people know the information you need to help you provide that information to the coaching team and the manager. And the way I position it is, actually it's not our decision at the end of the day. It comes down to us educating the key people involved in that decision to help them to make the right decision. And that's the coach and the player. And you can involve other stakeholders, sporting director, etc. But I think it comes down to that. And like, when it's helped me a lot to be able to walk in a room and you might have a disagreement on something, but essentially it's just me providing you with my opinion, and that opinion has been influenced by the discussions and the preparation and all those conversations we've had with the performance team to get to this point. There's our advice and our opinion. It's up to you whether you take it, and then that kind of removes you away from sort of making these decisions on, he can play, he can't play, he can play 30 minutes, he can play 60 minutes. Otherwise you get proved wrong, I think.
I think you get sucked into it, and it depends, it depends who you're talking to. Somebody might want to hear, can he play, can he not play? And the reality to this answer is you don't know. If you say he can play, you're lying, and if you say he can't play, you're also lying, because unless the guy has a broken leg and you send him out with a broken leg, which is pretty obvious then, but there is no right answer. So you going back to gut feeling, experience, and like you said, the parameters that you collect, which is a totally different topic again, because as much as I do that, to make sense out of all these parameters that we collect is also an absolute nightmare. And I don't know how much they really give us and explain to us the readiness of the player, especially post-injury.
No, I think exactly that. And also it probably comes back to that trusting relationship, doesn't it? The trusting relationship with the player, the trust relationship with the coach. I think that really is where it comes down to it. And, at a less elite level, when I was developing and sort of applying my trade in semi-professional rugby, we used to have a coach there who literally used to ask me at selection meetings, what's your gut? What's your gut feeling? What's your gut feeling on this player for the weekend? And we'd make that decision on a Tuesday night. He'd say, what's your gut? What's your gut, Ben? And I would say, he's 60-40 or he's 70-30. So we actually sort of came down to that decision. But because we worked together for probably, I think it was around 4 years, that became pretty decent, and they trusted it enough. And that really helped them to make the decision around who was going to be fit at the weekend and who wasn't. And all the bells and whistles and all the technology and all the data and all those other things actually probably don't help at the end of the day. It comes back to it comes back to gut feeling that and probably the gut feeling and the gut feeling of the team together, plus the player in front of you, will help you make as good a decision as possible in that moment. So
it'll be an interesting one, because I used to do the same in terms of percentage, readiness percentage. And did you feel like there was a cutoff point where, if you say, it's a 50-50 chance, and then people say, if you say, it's a 70% chance that they get injured, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, maybe you shouldn't play. But if you say it's like 60, then it's like, I'll take a 60. Have you ever experienced that? Like that there was
I still do it now, actually. So I still sort of ask players, like, if 100% is your best game ever, flying absolutely 100% fit, where are you today? And usually they'll say, I'm 85, 90% or something. And you go, no, right. Let's reframe this question. You 100% fit, fully flying, best, not injured, not coming back from injury. Oh, okay, I get it. And if someone says to me something below 50, if they say 40, I think, well, they're not ready. They're not ready. If someone says 70, 80, I'm like, well, they're close. They're probably still not ready, but it comes down to then a kind of, an acceptable level of risk almost. And that's what you're trying to gauge versus a 40 where, as long as you trust the player. I mean, some people are way out, aren't they? They're 100% all the time, or they've got an agenda where
Well,
they
they've
want to
learned
play.
your methods, and then they just tell you what you want to hear. But
Yeah, exactly.
so
But I think
that's
it would be interesting to actually, get that done in a kind of a statistical way and see actually how right you are, and who fails and who breaks down and who actually succeeds based on that just simple percentage readiness to play, in the right hands in the right place. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think it's how this will correlate. Yeah, would be really interesting.
So we've talked about sort of player care. We've talked about the challenges of elite environments. We talked off air beforehand, and I really liked and appreciated this around your role in kind of medical leader and performance team leader as a caretaker. And I just wanted you to sort of like share that with the listeners, because I really like that sort of thought process that you had.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, there's so many job titles out there, and many of them make no sense. It's performance director, it's head of performance, it's head of medical. So you've got all these different things out there. But for me, what I realized in this high pressured environment is that apart from all the other things that is your monitoring, your data acquisition, your testing, your treatments, your rehab, all this stuff. Your job is also to look after the people that work within the environment. So, all the people that work with you, you almost need to be there to allow them to perform at the best of their capabilities. And because of this demanding environment, 7 days a week, somebody might have family, they have kids at home, they haven't seen them in a while, they come to work, they take it to work, and it just filters down. So you just need to be almost there to understand that. Or if somebody professionally wants to develop and they're frustrated because they want to move on in their role and they want to be somewhere else, you have to have a plan in place. Or somebody wants to go on an education, you have to be there and facilitate that in order for those people to thrive in this environment, in this high pressured environment, and to give them a little bit more of longevity. The reality is we're not millionaires. Nobody gets a player salary in this. You earn good money and it's a great job, but the reality is you're not retiring at 35. So you need to do this for a very, very long time. And if you burn yourself out, and this becomes your sole life, it's very hard. It's very, very difficult to do this. And I don't think it's healthy after a while. I think apart from being, the performance part, you also have to be I don't want to say the caretaker, but you have to care. You have to care about your people that work there.
Yeah, I agree. I think, and some people are better than that, than others at that, aren't they? We had at Arsenal, we had one of our staff who was basically sort of self-appointed, or actually, I think I might have appointed him just simply because he had a real knack for looking out for people. He's the guy that remembered people's birthdays. He's the guy that, asked you about what you did at the weekend and remembered what you were doing. And it sounds really simple, but the caring aspect of that meant that you need someone to actually go against the grain. It's a traditional environment, elite sport. There's this presentism that everybody has, and it happens in the US, it happens in the UK. We all work hard. We're all in the job, and we know we have to work hard. But there are times when you can take that opportunity to basically, just take the pressure off and get yourself back in a good frame of mind, ready to come and help the team again. And I think, certainly you're right. Someone who's got an eye for that, someone who's allowing people to thrive and flourish by looking at their personal development pathway, that's massively going to fill up their energy bucket. It's not going to take away from them, and it's going to keep them going when you're driving through the long winter, you're in on Christmas Day, Boxing Day, and other people are at home on holiday. Yes, you do get paid better, but you've also got to look after yourself. And I think that's an absolutely vital component of what you offer as a head of department in an elite football environment. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And that it's okay. I mean, you know as well as I do, when you're not there for a day, it's like, oh, you had a cheeky day off, and this kind of comment. And then it's like, yeah, I did. It was great. And that's really important, to also have this safety net that you don't come into work and say, oh my God, what are the others going to think now that I had a day off and I didn't come? And it's just that's unhealthy. I think it's not sustainable. And
yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. That's a perfect word. Yeah, perfect word for it.
And I had an interesting encounter at some stage, and I had a guy coming in and talking about the role of head of performance. And, it was all it was great. I mean, it was a great presentation, and it was all about, how process and procedures would work, what recovery strategies, what kind of treatment modalities, what kind of strength and conditioning protocols were applied. But there was very little of that sort of like saying, okay, what else? This is what usually, the people on the floor do anyway. They will have a protocol for recovery. They will have a protocol for the rehabilitation. So it's already there. And of course you need to oversee it. And if the mistakes or something can be improved, you can make suggestions. But there's just more to it.
Yep.
And it filters down in the team. It definitely does.
Yeah, it differentiates the best teams from the rest, right? Exactly. You reminded me then actually of a question I got asked on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and the question was, who, and we're talking about kind of practitioners here, who makes a good head of performance? Is it a physio? Is it a strength and conditioning coach? Is it a sports scientist? What's your opinion on that? And I'm kind of expecting an answer here that isn't one or another, but yeah, I'm interested in your thoughts.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's the answer. I was expecting.
It doesn't matter who is it. It's usually the person that cares. That I would say, of course there has to be a knowledge, but I always would say I would always choose a person that I trust over the best practitioner out there. And why is that? Because you can learn skills, you can educate, but personality traits are very hard to change. And I think if you are somebody that can be trusted and that can has an open ear and is willing to change and willing to adapt, I think these are all trademarks that you have to have in a position like that to be successful.
Yeah, that's also echoed. I think it might be Simon Sinek who talks about his interactions with some high performing teams, and he went into the Navy SEALs, and their way of putting it is, do I trust you with my wife and my life?
It's right. Yeah. Very similar. That's right. So nobody wants the high performer,
yes,
low trust. Right. That was the whole thing. I've seen this as well. Yeah. I like that actually. I think that is really that hits the nail on the head.
Yeah, and a lot of that is around, I think, that emotional intelligence, which you were pointing out before, is like the sort of the family aspects of looking after each other in and around that environment. People, high performers, especially around like practitioner roles, can have this massive IQ and knowledge base, but not always got those softer skills, which are the key to making the impact in those environments. So yeah, I think that's a good summary. The last thing I wanted to ask you, Phil, and I think it's probably interesting. We can talk about it from both of our perspectives here, but like a normal day, in an elite football environment, for those people who haven't worked in an elite football environment, what does a normal day look like for a performance team? What's the workflow look like?
What does the workflow look like? So usually it starts early in the morning. Let's say you're there at 8ish. Then you have the meeting with the long-term rehabbers. They usually start before the training starts, and the dedicated rehab team takes care of them. So you're there for that. Then do bits and pieces around staff education, answering emails, have lunch. Then you probably 2.5 hours before training, you start with your staff meeting. You just go through players that might be, flagging that or had picked up some knocks in the session before, and you discuss those, treat them, reassess them with the doc and the head physio, and then report to the coaching staff if they're not able to train, if they have to be aware of something, if they need to be modified. Then continue with the treatment of the players. Training session usually goes on, which is covered by a member of staff. And then after the training session, which takes about an hour and a half, 2 hours with pre-activation and all that stuff. And then after that, you meet again once all the players are done, and you go through the day if anything happened. You make a plan for the next day. Do any medical appointments need to be set up? Does anybody need to see a specialist? And yeah, that's pretty much it. And by the time you had dinner, it's 8 till 8, 6-7 days a week.
Yep, 8 till 8. I think that's not always the case, but yeah, most of the time. I mean, it was interesting. You had that sort of morning rehab and training in the afternoon. We used to have some players who left their engine running and would come in, go to training, and they'd be gone by by lunchtime.
Yeah, no,
there are a few, but then there are others coming in at 7:30, trying to do a session before the main session, and then they're still there in the pool at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and you're trying to kick them out because the traffic's building up on the M25.
With the rehabbers, I mean, so we had a dedicated team, which I think you guys did as well, which basically was just 2 physios and 1 strength and conditioning coach, and they would take care of all the long-term rehabs. And then we had a travel team, and obviously the guys that come in early in the morning, we trained most of the time. Also in Qatar, we trained late in the evening. So you try to bring in all the rehabs beforehand, and their day drags on. By the time you've done all your treatment, your movement preparation, your pool sessions and all that sort of stuff, the day's gone. And then the players come in for training, and then so that's why the days become so long.
Yeah, I think we had a sort of individual physio who would take maybe the responsibility of 1 or 2 players, depending on the injury list at the time, and then we'd have a strength and conditioning coach specifically working inside with the injured players around their programming, and they would have lunch and then a fitness session after lunch at some point, and probably massage and other work to take care of them. Whereas the healthy players, they would be in there for only sort of half a day really in total, because if we had a morning session, they'd be in for that pre-activation, maybe some testing, monitoring. They'd finish the session. If there was a strength component to do on that day, they'd do it, and then they'd have lunch and unless there was anything else to do, they'd probably be gone. So it's pretty much the same wherever you go. The demands are similar, and how you organise that is up to the individual organisations. Yeah. Phil, I'm really grateful for your time. I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Shame we couldn't have a beer.
Yes, I hope at some stage we'll do in the sun.
Yeah, that would be nice. Well, get the weather sorted in Greece, and I'll pop over. I'll pop over in the summer, get some time off. But yeah, thanks again for giving up your precious time today. just the last thing, I know you're not massive on social media, Phil, but where can people follow you?
Follow me. I mean, the only thing I really do is I've got my LinkedIn profile. So if anybody has any questions, you're more than welcome to text me on LinkedIn. But I don't really do social media otherwise.
That is absolutely fine, and we'll link you up in the show notes. But again, Phil, thanks very much for coming on today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.